Welcome back to another SPK and Associates vlog. My name is Michael Roberts, Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at SPK and Associates. And today we're talking about challenges that nearly every software engineering team faces. How do you actually know when software is ready for release? For years, teams have relied on passing tests and green dashboards as signals of quality. But as systems really grow and complexity and tool chains are even more fragmented, those signals are really becoming unreliable. In this conversation, we're going to explore the idea of engineering intelligence, moving beyond reactive quality checks to a little bit more proactive identifying of risks before those things show up in production. We'll talk about why green dashboards alone can be very misleading and how AI-driven insights can surface hidden risks across engineering data, and why that matters even more now for regulated industries and embedded software environments. So today I'm joined by Vibhuti Bhushan from CleverDev. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Michael. My name is Vibhuti and I'm co-founder of CleverDev. What we are trying to do with CleverDev is to arm engineering leaders with the data from their SDLC toolchains and help them make planning and software release decisions. Our goal is to ensure that engineering teams will never need to manually collect data from various tools and kind of make a release decision because they see a bunch of green dashboards.
So, as someone who has manually collected data for that purpose before, I appreciate that this approach. I don't want to have to do that manually because it takes forever, and of course, I always forget something. So, can you give us maybe a 30-second overview of what CleverDev is?
Yeah, sure. CleverDev is a data platform. So we ingest data from your entire SDLC ecosystem and compute a predictive risk score. We create a link for each line of code to understand why it was written, how it was tested, and how defect prone it has been in the past. And that allows our platform to flag hotspots. So even if your code coverage is 70%, for example, we are able to advise leaders that riskier codes are well tested and they can make informed release decisions based on their risk appetite. It helps leaders focus their resources on managing riskier areas of the code and release products with fewer defects, which essentially leads to happy customers. And not to forget about developers because they don't have to spend a significant portion of their time fixing production defects and releasing hot fixes. So essentially, if I have to summarize all of this, right? So we move teams from firefighting to forecasting. Instead of reacting to a customer reported incident, we help engineering leaders assess risks continuously and in real time.
I love that. And in a blog post that you wrote, you talked a little bit about passing tests and like green dashboards are no longer sufficient to trust for release readiness. So why do you say that?
So, because green dashboards don't equal quality, right? So, you can have 90% code coverage, and I'm picking on code coverage because that's one of the key metrics that people look at. You can have 90% code coverage and still ship a release full of bugs coming from the 10% code that is not tested. If you look at the engineering teams today, they leverage more than a few tools to build software. You have like planning tools, CI/CD tools, issue trackers, coding tools, and stuff like that, right? They all produce isolated metrics, but none of them show the correlated risk. So to give you an example, right? If one of your module has high code churn, unlinked changes, and a history of production incidents, it's a ticking time bomb as far as it comes to kind of future defects coming from that module. But your traditional dashboards will completely miss that. So even if the dashboard says it's green, you still have that risky piece of code that you have not paid attention to.
And I think that's why I like your product so much in terms of I've gotten the sneak peek at the actual product, so I could say this, but I feel like it goes, as you mentioned, goes well beyond a green dashboard and really gets into the nitty gritty and even, code coverage, I think is a good example of that. So next question, how does CleverDev help engineering and product teams shift from being more reactive, like you mentioned, finding bugs and hopefully not in production, but maybe in production, to a little bit more proactive quality where you're looking at those predictive risks before they'll happen? How does that work?
So first and foremost, right? So you don't have to kind of have a release meeting and ask people to bring metrics to say how are we doing. So this is a platform which is continuously getting data from all your tools and doing this calculation in real time. So that's one. Second is there are two pieces to the product, planning and software quality. And with software quality, as I said before, we create that link for each line of code, why it was written, when it was written, how well tested it is, and what has been the history with that line of code. Right. So we do that assessment on a regular basis. As soon as a new line of code is checked in, we do that assessment and say, has the risk increased because of that line of code, or has it decreased, right? And that gives opportunity to engineering leaders to say, am I within my risk profile, or do I need to do something different? And that is specifically means, here is a area of code that you need to pay more attention to, and that kind of focuses the attention, and it goes beyond like, are we 90% on everything? You can be 60% on everything and still release a better product than being 90% on most of the things and start seeing like production incidents. So we do that on a continuous basis in real time, so leaders can just go in the tool and see what has happened in the last 24 hours or 48 hours, and how has that impacted their planning, and how has that impacted the release quality itself.
I love it. I love it. Now, a lot of SPK's clients are in, we call them highly regulated industries, medical device, automotive, with embedded software and those type of things. So, what tangible value do you see in adopting like that engineering intelligence platform approach that gives them, beyond just a cleaner dashboard, a better dashboard that they would have had before?
No, that's a great question, because when you talk about these industries, the cost of defect is obviously fairly high for everyone, right? So it's there has been studies around what is the cost of production defect in software industry, but specifically the industries that you are talking about, the cost of defect is not having to release a patch, right? It's compliance failure, it's safety risk, and things like that. So using something like CleverDev, you can kind of see three areas where you really benefit, like testing optimization, for example. So some of these industries have long testing cycles. So with the help of CleverDev, they can really focus the QA resources on what really needs testing. So it not only reduces the test time it takes to test, but also reduce risk at the same time. Defect avoidance. So one of the key functionalities that we have is around catching regression risk. And that is essentially catching risk associated with unchanged functionalities that might be impacted by new code. And this is huge for clients in these industries, because as I said before, the regressions can be an expensive compliance failure or a safety risk. And last but not the least, audit readiness, right? So we talked about how this platform creates that link between all your tools and really understands why a line of code was written, how it was tested, and how defect prone has it been in the past. So from audit perspective, this is huge, because now you can easily see who did what and why, and this is always available to you in real time, so you don't have to kind of do an audit to see how these things look like. This is always available to you at your fingertips. So I think these three areas are hugely beneficial to some of the clients that SPK interacts with.
I love it's at your fingertips because as some of our clients have seen, audits mean running around and trying to gather information. So having it available and readily available at all times is really important. Awesome point. So Vibhuti, this has been a phenomenal discussion. I really appreciate your time, and I think what stands out to me is that like software quality today isn't whether it passed a test or not. It's about where that risk is hiding and how confidently you are to reduce that risk and understand it before release, and then
Yep.
what data points you have to make decisions. So I love the implementation that you've created here to lessen the risk at the end of the day and not worry about what's passed and code coverage and all those things. You're really getting
And
into
Michael,
the
we
hard
didn't
work.
even touch on Gen AI writing a bunch of codes, right? So
Exactly. Which
it's
I feel
like the
like is a
whole
requirement.
velocity of writing code is going to go through the roof. So it's like having something like CleverDev where you don't have to manually do anything. You just
Right.
set it up and it is continuously doing that risk assessment for you as your Gen AI tools or your developers are writing code and going through that process of generating the software that you are building.
Yeah, and I think you're going to hear because of CleverDev. I think you're going to hear more about the engineering intelligence platforms going forward. So thank you for that. Appreciate your time and appreciate how CleverDev is approaching this problem and why it's especially important for regulated industries and really complex engineering environments.
Thanks,
Um,
Michael. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So thanks for everybody that was able to watch. And if you have a question on these green dashboards and if that really means readiness, I think we probably have to have a deeper conversation. So reach out to our team on our socials or on our website. If you like this content, be sure to subscribe to the SPK and Associates YouTube channel for more videos like it. Until next time, we'll see you again.
Thanks, Michael.